Queen's Lead podcast. I'm your host, Amy Singleton, and as a child of the 80s, I'd love to say Queens rule, but they don't. Queens lead. Being a queen means you are worthy to be a leader of people. The guests on our show do exactly that. They are leading the way in their businesses, families, and communities. They're taking their rightful place in the spotlight, leading and inspiring the developing queens in all of us. Welcome to the Queen's Lead podcast.
Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of the Queen's Lead podcast. Today, I am so honored to be joined by Julie Rising. She is a mindset and empowerment coach. She is a wife, a mom, a grandma for not too long, and she is a native here in Oklahoma. Welcome, Julie.
Hey, I am so glad to be here today to talk with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about Julie.
Oh, okay. So I am 56 years old, so there's kind of a lot to tell. So you kind of hit some of my roles, certainly, wife and mom and grandma, which I love. I love being a grandma. And, but I'm a person who really embraces like the little things in life. I'm pretty good at celebrating little moments as if they're kind of big moments. I am a person who loves travel. I like new experiences, just novel experiences, a new coffee shop. I do love coffee. That's another thing I love is coffee.
Yes.
And so like career wise, I started out working. I couldn't quite figure out what I wanted to do into undergrad, but I just wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. Knew I wanted to do something like in the psychology, helping people kind of realm. So I ended up, by the time I think can't remember exactly how old I was. It was in my early 30s when I graduated from grad school as a therapist. And so then I pursued that. For over 20 years, I've been working as a therapist and then as a registered play therapist also. So working with families and children to help them find a healthy way to live living their best life is kind of how I think about it.
Yeah. So when you got that degree, were you working for someone else at that time as a therapist?
No, actually, so it was, my having my children and getting my degree kind of coincided. I started
as it often does.
Right, yeah. So my son was, I think, 4 weeks old when I started grad school, and then I walked across the stage 8 months pregnant with my daughter, or 7 months, something like that, pregnant with my daughter. So they were kind of the bookends to my graduate program.
Nice.
So I was, so what I found myself, and this is kind of interesting. So I never really intended to be an entrepreneur or a business owner. And yet, because it fit our lifestyle and kind of wanting to have flexibility and be at home and those sorts of things, I ended up doing just that. So I opened my own private practice, just very part-time. So I worked with another therapist, like in their office, like I rented office part-time. I did everything like very part-time. And that's kind of how I got started in it.
Oh, wow. That's so brave to like just do it on your own from the beginning. Were you influenced by other entrepreneurs that you kind of saw that as a solution for your lifestyle?
Well, that's a great question. I think I've always been pretty good, not always pretty good, but that was during a time in my life where I was recognizing more of what I needed. So, I was in my 30s by then. More of what I needed to be living my best life. And so for me, the fit of time and flexibility. And so I think at the time I saw it more as a means to an end. And in fact, when I think about it, one of the things that, if I'd say a regret or maybe a misstep that I have, is that I didn't take it more seriously as a business sooner.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like I was a counselor and by the way, I have this business that helps me be a counselor, but I didn't really embrace business ownership and being an entrepreneur and really even like making money, like the importance of being paid what we're worth, that
Yeah.
that has come later in my career rather than earlier. So I would say,
Yeah. Well, we
yeah,
don't know what we don't know when we jump into that. So that's why most of us are just more comfortable with getting that degree and then like, okay, now here's my job in that degree. So congratulations for doing it. Even if you didn't know it all at first, it sounds like it's been quite successful.
yeah, it has. That is, yeah, that it has. It has been kind of, it was like kind of a happy accident. And then I loved it. And then I remember getting to the point where I couldn't imagine going back to where somebody else told me when I had to be at work. I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm doing that. I don't think that's what I'm going to do. And so by then, I think I had done more to kind of embrace myself as a business owner, business person, and as a, like this person with this passion for my profession as well.
Yeah. And a therapist that actually sets her own healthy boundaries and rules for her own life. Congratulations. Most of the therapists I know are not, they're way too giving of their time and
Yeah,
resources. So that's a great
yes.
balance for you.
I may have been called the boundary queen once or twice by my colleagues. And so
Good.
and really it's so exciting to talk about boundaries. So boundaries is one of my favorite subjects of ever. I'm very passionate about boundaries. Because I have learned through my own experience that when you don't know what you're saying yes to or no to, you really can't experience the fullness of your yes. Like if you don't have a no, number one, it's not an authentic yes. If you don't ever say no, then your yeses probably are not particularly authentic and certainly not aligned for you. And so one of the things that I actually help people with a lot now, and I certainly did so as a therapist and now as a mindset and empowerment coach, is to help people really identify what their yeses are. So then we can figure out where we need to put the no's in, because they go together, and so most of us are pretty in touch with the uncomfortableness of saying no. Like we get how that feels, because it feels like, oh, especially if you've not done it. I always say it's a little addicting once you start doing it. But, so if you don't, so really helping clients lean into their yes. What are they saying yes to when they do put a healthy boundary in place? So not just being attuned to the discomfort or maybe the questioning of the no, but really, really leaning into and embodying their yes. And I think that is super exciting.
That is so powerful. I mean, truly, I was just talking to my husband yesterday about the same thing about we only have so many hours, right? And when you begin to identify and you begin to elevate yourself to these different levels of growth in your life, it becomes more natural for the people especially the people that you used to say yes to. It does get a little easier to say no, because you realize that you're not offering one another the same thing you used to. And that's I carry around a lot of guilt and kind of shame and trying to struggle through that. I think all of us sort of deal with that when we move beyond. We don't want to seem like, oh, well, we're above you. But
Right.
how do we say no to those things that we've outgrown maybe in our life?
Oh, okay. So yeah, because that
I
is.
didn't mean for this to be Amy's personal question, but just lay it on me, like, because this is like good stuff. Let's go.
But I think that's what we're talking about. I mean, what we're talking about
Everybody, we all feel this way, but no one can say it. Like,
in particular with women, I think, of course, every time I say that, then I can think of half a dozen men that I've talked to that need,
right.
But I do think that women can fall prey to gender roles, to societal norms, to what we thought we were supposed to do.
Yeah.
especially when we do take on roles as partners and parents, like those, in particular, I think have a lot of kind of socially charged norms around them. And then we get a little bit lost in that. And so you're right, as we up level, and I think of it as getting to know next level Julie, like I'm always like pursuing passionate pursuit of next level Julie. And so when I think about that, you're right. If we don't start to say no to maybe some different things, then we won't be able to go to our next level. And that's really doing a disservice, not only for ourselves and the people that we love, but also for just the world itself, because the world needs our next level self. The world just
Yeah.
does. And so when I think about that, then that's where, like, so if you were my client, and you're not, but if you were my client, one of the things that I would do, and in fact, I did it just this morning on a call with a client. It's kind of, interesting synergy there. She's saying no to something that she's setting a boundary that she hasn't set before, and it is an up level for her. And so we did some of what I think of kind of like the feminine energy of being, like we really harnessed that, and we leaned into everything that she was saying yes to. And we were really, and we spent a few minutes really identifying like her kind of, and so that becomes like your most important why. That's your, and what are you saying yes to? So from my client, it was saying yes to being 100% present with her family. It was, and we identified 3 or 4 things that she was saying a full body yes to when she was setting this boundary. That you're right, that is saying no to someone gets the no. And I think part of that too is probably what I would work with a client about, is really thinking about, if someone can't tolerate my no, do they fit for where I'm going? And there's like some emotional charge around that. We need to acknowledge that there's uncomfort and discomfort on our part. There might be on the other person's part. And so when you think about what to say to people, I love phrases like, that used to work really well for me, and I'm finding it doesn't work for me now. So kind of honor our own process, right? Like I used to say
Yeah.
yes to this,
Mhm.
and now I'm changing. I love that when we can kind of acknowledge, when we don't just kind of like switch, but it just seems like we just switched without any thought, right? Like kind of being transparent about our process. I really sat down and thought about this, and in order to do this next thing, I have to change some things right now, and this is going to be one of them.
Wow, that's so good. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, it's so hard to, so when you recognize that growth, to be able to stop and go, is this still serving me? If it's not, you have to cut ties, or else you're just serving everyone else around you instead of yourself. And that has to be a relationship too. So yeah.
I love that. So I love that you say that, because that's exactly what I think. I believe that yes, everything is relational, and that relationship with ourself is probably the one that gets neglected the most, is possibly the least developed, unless we've been very intentional, because most people, like our social structure and our family structure and stuff, it just really isn't designed to be like, so have you checked in with yourself today, and how is she feeling, and where, like, have you checked on, next level Amy, to see what kind of wisdom she has for you today? So unless we've been pretty intentional about that relationship with ourselves, it probably doesn't come very naturally to most of us.
It doesn't. It really doesn't. And I mean, I'm a product of decades of therapy that just allows me to be able to recognize that alone. So yeah, totally see the value. So speaking of therapy, tell us about the transition from when you started off in your shared office, and what happened to bring you to mindset and empowerment coach.
Oh,
I
okay.
know that's probably a very long story, but
Well, it's a little bit, well, it is, but it isn't. I mean, in a way. So it kind of, yeah. So, so therapy is a more, it's a little bit more traditional in some ways, right? Although some people are kind of new to the idea of therapy. One of the things, I think the best things to come of social media is this awareness that you're not going to be the only one who's gone to therapy.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you just said it, like you just very much normalized it, didn't you? You said, "Oh yeah, I've been to therapy," like, and we found out like we're not alone, and that's amazing. I think that's just something that's been amazing. But yeah, so therapy, I've been so passionate, and it's always about where you are and then where do you want to be, like where do you want to be. And I think of healthiness as being kind of a continuum, and we actually have several of them in our lives, right, that are, it's like, so I might be really struggling in this area, but I might have a lot of healthiness or kind of like habits that really support me, ways of thinking, ways of being that really support me over here. How can we borrow that, so I've done
Mhm.
that. And so yeah, so I've done I've worked with lots of people, lots of client ages. I think 2.5 was my youngest, and I think my oldest lady was that I worked with, who was amazing, was 86 years old. So I've kind
Oh,
of like
wow.
across the lifespan. So when I say it's for everybody, I really mean it. And so, and I've
Yes.
done my own therapy work, worked on my own stuff over the years. But yeah, so I did that, and and then we moved 14 years ago. We moved back to Oklahoma. We were living in Michigan and had started our family there, and then we moved back here. Um, so lots of transitions. I was with an agency for almost 10 years. And so the last probably, I'm going to say about 5 years, I started kind of like hanging out with coaches and kind of learning about life coaching and learning what it was about and stuff. And I was very fascinated. I could really see how it could complement therapy, or how it could help people in different ways, and it
Mhm.
has a different kind of audience in some ways. Some of it overlaps, but some of it doesn't. And so I was really fascinated, and I kept kind of saying, like, like, yeah, I'm going to do some coaching. I'm going to do coaching. I'm going to do, and I say I was threatening to do it. I kept threatening to become a coach.
Talking about it, planning it, mapping it out,
Think about
researching
it
what
in my
others are
head.
doing. Yeah, I'm a
Yeah,
good planner. I
yeah,
gotcha.
all of that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like all of that, but not actually like doing any
Doing the thing. Yes.
yeah, exactly. So then last year, so in 20, and so in fact, it was just like kind of my anniversary of my pivot earlier this month. So in June of 21, I had been invited to speak at the She Leads conference. And it was it's a very high vibe. It's all about, women's empowerment. It's just this amazing group of people. And so I was asked to speak, and it connected me with some people that were kind of doing what I wanted to do in a way
Mhm.
that felt really accessible to me. That's not quite the right word, but
Oh, masterminding
right.
with those that are doing what you want to do is like the most valuable thing I've
Yeah.
found ever.
Yeah, and so through that experience, I found a coach, and I invested really for the first time in a high level one-on-one coaching experience. I'd done group coaching, I had done masterminds, I had done some other things, but I really did that. And I told her, I said, this is what I want. I want for my kind of my next stage of my career. I want to be a coach. Like, this is what I want to do. And so I really started to do the things that I kept talking about doing.
Yay!
So yeah, so I do. So what I have now is a little bit of a hybrid. So as far as like the counseling world, I mentor counselors. So we have something called supervision. In order to get your license, you have to be supervised by somebody with a license. And so
Okay.
I'm a supervisor to therapists, and I
Okay.
do some teaching where I'm providing supervision of therapists who are still in grad school, and so they're seeing their very first client. So it's
Wow.
about that kind of like professional and personal development piece that so excites me. So I still get to do that in the therapy world, which is very cool. And I am a mindset and empowerment coach, and so I get to work. So my client work now is all focused in the coaching realm, and I can work with all sorts of people. It's not so much like what they do, because I think transformation can happen. You can be in a variety of situations or roles, and transformation can certainly happen. But I help people um kind of rediscover who they are and what they really want and have that rooted in their core values. Because to
Mm.
me, that brings in the alignment piece where we get realigned because we can, maybe you've experienced this or know people that have it, like you get kind of down the road and then you're like, wait, why am I doing this? Right?
Yes.
So yeah, so over the course of the last year, I stopped seeing, like, gradually, closed my counseling client caseload and started my coaching client caseload. So, or
Nice.
I don't know how you say that for coaching, but yeah.
So who is their client now? Are we business owners, men, women, age group? Who are the people that you're able to help the most, do you think?
So the people I think that I'm able to help the most, probably, like, this seems to be the people who find me. That's, are people that are anywhere in their, like, 30s to, like, 60s. They're looking like maybe they started on a path because that they thought that's what they were supposed to do. And now they're questioning whether and maybe it even fit for a while, but it's not fitting as well now. But they feel a little bit stuck. So they feel, because they're kind of like in this place, they have an idea of where they might want to be. Maybe they're a little afraid to dream that dream. I help
Mhm.
people dream big on that one. So maybe they're feeling a little bit stuck. Maybe they're what I experienced where they keep talking about it, but they're not actually doing about it. Right?
Yes.
Those
Yes.
kinds of things. That people are so when I think about transformation, it's like aligning it, figuring out what their values, their most important values are, and then allowing that to be the guide for all of the decisions that they make, and removing whatever blocks are keeping them from not only dreaming that big dream, but going after that big dream.
Mm.
Because I would say most of us know the steps that, we know what the steps are. And so if we're not taking the steps, then it's probably because we have a block there. We have a belief that doesn't serve us very well. We had an experience, maybe there's some shame or something around us not doing it right the first time, or another time in our life or something like
Yes.
that. And
Yes.
so it's removing those blocks, and boundaries is usually part of that. What do I say no to right now so I can say yes to my next level self? Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so good. I know I have shit on myself so many times. I hear a lot of coaches say, quit shitting on yourself. Like I said last week, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed that I didn't read more before the last 5 years. Probably the last 5 years. I mean, outside of high school and college, I didn't pick up a book. And I spent time with a mindset block, like not picking up the book anyway, because I never had. And I was ashamed that I didn't know before I was in my mid 30s that I should read. Well, bitch, just start reading. What is wrong with you? And then I did, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, I guess I'm a little embarrassed that I didn't know about this before, but wow, taking that step now, I'm like, I want more. I want more, and I do it all the time now. I mean, it's just a silly example, but like if we can get hung up over not reading, what else in our lives are we being hung up on?
Absolutely. And we do that to ourselves all the time. And so so for me, for what I find when I'm working with clients is just us having a conversation around or identifying, like, what do you think is keeping you stuck here? Like, oh, okay, so you've said you wanted to do this and you haven't, what's keeping you stuck, in just being able to identify those kinds of beliefs so often, like, kind of shake loose or let us figure out what kind of boundaries do you need to have there. In that situation, I would, you said to me earlier, like, you just can't know what you don't know, right? Like, we can't know.
Right.
Sometimes we just need to have grace for ourselves and compassion for ourselves. So I love to employ compassionate curiosity, rather than, because if you listen to how we talk to and about ourselves, most of us are very stuck in a very judgmental mindset. about ourselves. We may or may not be judgmental about other people. In fact, sometimes we're very grace-filled and very compassionate about others. And yet when it comes to me, I should be different, right? Like that's kind of the
Yes.
self-talk.
Yes.
And so being able to cultivate a mindset of compassionate curiosity about ourselves, about our motivation, about how we got where we are, and how we want to move forward. That really empowers us then to move forward.
Yes. And it's so rare these days too. I mean, I hate that it takes a therapist or a coach to get that kind of compassionate curiosity from another person. We are so busy to have an actual deep conversation about our lives, our motives, what we want, what we don't want, our boundaries. How often are these conversations happening at dinner tables or in relationships or on the street or at coffee with a friend? It's such chit chat and superficial things. I think it's time we need to normalize these types of conversations amongst ourselves too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love that. And for some people, they can have that conversation with a trusted friend. They do have great social support. They do have a partner who's really in their corner. And sometimes it's really helpful to have someone who doesn't play that role in your life, because
Yes.
in relationships, relationships are typically designed, personal relationships are designed to be like a two-way street, right? I think about you, you think about me, like we're both kind of contributing, all of that. But then if we are supporting ourselves by employing a professional, then we both are focused on the client.
The one person.
Yeah,
Yes.
the one
Yes.
person, right? Like
Very
we do this
intentionally so.
very intentionally. Yes, it's the way the relationship is absolutely designed to be. And not that, like my coach never shares, or your therapist, you think your therapist is an automaton or something, right? Like we know they have lives, we know they have
Yes.
shit, right? We know it. But we can really, like you said, very intentionally focused on the growth of the client. And that to me is such a gift to give yourself, because it is a very unique relationship and it is going to be different than your other relationships. And here's the other thing too. You're not going to go to your coach and say, "Hey, I have this really big idea. This is my dream. Like this is my big dream." And have your coach go, "But how are we going to pay for that? But will we get to still do blah, blah, blah? Are you sure you want to do that?" Right?
Yeah.
When we're in relationship with other people, their stuff is in the mix, right?
Yeah. Every reason why it won't work. Every
Right.
reason. Yes.
Sometimes their fearful part wants to keep us safe, and they
Yeah.
don't realize how that can really impact, right? Like we bring our little baby bird big dream to them, right? This like delicate little thing, and we
Yes.
bring it to them, and then their fear kind of gets in the way, and we go,
Squash
"Oh,
it.
yeah," it just squishes them, right? And you're like, "Okay, see, I didn't think that was okay, that wasn't a good idea."
Right. And then you just stop.
Yeah, if you just right. And that can really, that when in the kind of inception part of our dreams and figuring out our goals can really be hard for us. And so,
Yeah.
when we have a therapist, or if we have a coach, like our coach is going to be like all in and say,
Right.
right? Like, okay, let's figure out some action steps. Let's envision next level self, next level you in that. How will she feel? How will she behave? What will she be wearing? Where will she be living? What will she be doing? How will she be able to impact her community?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
suddenly we start to see possibility rather than problems.
Yes. Yes. Oh, yes, Queen. That's why you're on this podcast. Okay. So tell us about some of you. I heard the word action steps was my favorite thing. So what does some of your process look like when someone comes to you for coaching? They say, I'm stuck, I'm 40, I've been in this job forever, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to change jobs. Other than talking about it and dreaming, what are the kinds of action steps? Are you working with people on things like breath work or physical actionable items, or what are the other pieces that play a role in your coaching program?
Yeah, so kind of, so I don't want to say all the things because no, not all the things, but there is some structure. My structure tends to be a little bit loose, because it does a little bit depend on what the dream is and that
Of
sort of
course.
where they are and stuff. But yeah, so the one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to do a values exercise. We're going to identify your most important value, because that's going to become like kind of our shining light, our leading light, right?
Yes.
That's going to inform it. It's easy. So when we're in touch with things like our values, those create very natural boundaries for us. So you do your job. When someone says to you, hey, can you cater my party next Saturday? You don't go, oh, sure, because you're not a caterer, right? Like you're like that's a pretty easy boundary, isn't it? Right? You're like,
Right.
I'm not a caterer. That's not what I do, right? So it's pretty easy. So in the same way, like values can become that kind of natural boundary. We can say, how does that fit with your value? And if it doesn't fit with your value, then that's a pretty easy thing to keep off your plate, to not add into your life, because that's what a lot of us are guilty of, right? Like
Yes.
adding in. So we're going to look at those values and see, like, how are they guiding you? How are they maybe tripping you up because you have some beliefs around your values? Or how are you showing up in your values in some areas of your life, but not others?
Mm.
So we're going to identify those things, because that becomes that's really like there's our guide. There's the path, right?
You just struck a nerve. I don't know if you saw that in my face, but like you just struck a nerve. Okay, keep going.
Okay.
I love it.
Yeah, so and to me, like then almost immediately we're identifying alignment or lack of misalignment in our
Yes.
lives, right? Like, where do we have alignment with this? Where don't we have alignment? So then we know where the work needs to be, don't we? And
Yeah.
so yeah, so then we do that. And so then we do, I have a meditation that I do where we meet our next level self and we consult with her, and we consult with that our next level self,
Ooh, I
because
love
my belief
that.
is that our and that to me is like the manifestation energy that we can bring. So action can be doing, but it can also be being, practicing being. And so part of that is to get to know, because our next level self always has wisdom, has perfect wisdom for us, and isn't wrapped up in any of the fear or the safety issues that we're in right now, right? Our next level self always knows that everything has worked out in the most divine and amazing and powerful way for us, that the
They're
universe.
the hindsight 2020 person embodied.
Yes,
Yes, I
exactly.
love
And so,
that.
yeah, so we do that. Then and then we start to look at, based on these things, then where do the boundaries? So often the action steps have to do with moving toward the big dream. Like, okay, if there was no fear, what would I be doing? Right? If I had no concern around money, what would I be doing? Right? And so then we can start to develop a very concrete action plan to move towards that. But then we're always practicing being in alignment with our values, our boundaries, our next level self. So so we're always moving toward that. And so that starts to inform the action steps pretty quickly. What's something you might need to say, you said, if you came to me and said, I've got all these things on my plate and I don't know which one's the most important, we can identify which ones are the most important and which ones, and that's what my clients do. I mean, they're like, oh, I was really feeling like making my bed every morning was the most, when it was like a have to.
Yeah.
what if you have to choose between making your bed and taking an action step towards booking another client in your business? Is the bed just as important, and how does that align
Yeah.
with your value? How does that align with your goal? And suddenly maybe making the bed is that important, and that's cool. I'm not the one to say whether it is or not. Making my bed is not important, but doesn't mean that for other people it's not. What does it do for the person? But we start to really question those things that so often just become, they're just so in our lives, so embedded in the way we think, that it's hard to think differently about them.
Yeah. Things become automatic that are huge
Yeah.
time sucks that you start to go, oh, yeah, maybe that's not the best spend of my time.
You're right. And that was in the context of, this was for a person who had some beliefs around how she needed to show up as a partner, and as like even kind of like a roommate to her partner, type of thing. And we just started to explore and question how accurate that might be. Could she talk to her partner and renegotiate? Right? Like we just opened up some things. And, this is what I always think is interesting. Like, we have these whole like stories in our head about like how things are and how things have to be. And we include other people in those, like, well, my partner thinks this, or so-and-so thinks this, or my kid will, whatever, if I don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when we can actually consult those people.
Yeah, we could ask, because I heard just recently in a group, what you just said resonated straight to my brain, because someone stood up and said, one of my mentors stood up and said, it's not what I think about me. It's not what you think about me. It's what I think you think about me that really matters and that really holds me up. And I was like, holy crap, my head exploded, because I'm constantly thinking, well, I better make the bed, or Joseph will think this, or my husband would never think anything like that. But, I better do this because this person expects that, or this person. Do they expect that? Have you ever asked them?
Yeah.
Mind blown.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you're in tune with that and teaching this to people, because it blew my mind.
Yeah, it absolutely. And so for my own, to out myself on my own, part of my transformation. So
Good.
I'm a person who didn't grow up with social media. I didn't grow up with a selfie although I do love to take selfies now.
Right,
But,
yeah.
so what I found was I show up pretty authentically when I'm having a conversation with someone. Like, even though this is a recorded conversation, like I don't have a lot of, I'm not, imposter syndrome. I'm not real worried. Like, I feel like this kind of thing is my jam, and like, no problem. And then when, my coach says, okay, so I want you to do a live every week on Instagram. And then I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm sick that day.
Right, exactly.
Sick, right? Yeah. And so I found myself, doing a deep dive into my, Candy Crush or whatever I was playing on my phone, and not doing this. And so part of that was this idea, like, in this kind of situation, you can ask me a clarifying question and I can explain myself. I can explain what I mean by what I say.
Right.
But, when you just get on a live with, and it's just you and your camera, it just stands, right? It just is what it is. Or if you write it in a post,
yeah,
it's there, and people forever, right? Yeah. What if I change my mind? Right.
Oh my God, the world doesn't forgive people who understand and do better and know better moving forward. That's off the table these days. You can't change your mind and do better. God forbid.
Right. And so that's, that's the kind of thing that I had to really, because it wasn't what I thought, it wasn't what you thought, it was what I thought you would think. And those are the kinds of things that really will hold us back and keep, that's the stuckness, I think. For women who have, are parents, is it okay to have a career that you love as much as your family? Our society has a lot to say about that.
Yes, they do.
Right? I mean,
oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe you're just not maternal enough.
Right.
That's the problem. right? Like we get,
Mm,
we can get lots and lots of messages around those kinds of things.
yeah.
And it gets us in a place where we just don't know if we can move forward. So it's so important. And I think you said it. It's so important that we are able to do our own reflection around what do we believe? And if we didn't have to risk judgment, what would we say? What would we do? How would we show up in this world? And so for me, when we're doing that, that's when we are embracing our own specific brand of amazing. We all have a unique way of being amazing. It already exists within us. I help clients maybe unlock that for themselves, but it's not like I'm like, oh, here's some amazing and I'm going to put it in you and it's all for me. Like I did that.
Right.
No, like all I'm doing is helping people kind of like remove those layers that help them get to their unique brand of amazing so that they can shine it and be loud and proud in this world with it. And think about a world where everyone is embracing their amazing because they know it's amazing and they believe it's amazing and they're just putting it out in the world and we're all just shining bright. Like, think about what a great world that is.
Yeah, yeah. And my entire, my whole identity is wrapped up in that right now, like bringing women leaders to light and showing despite and not even despite our shortcomings and our failures, but because of them. I've been so ashamed. I mean, the fact that I said I'm a product of decades of therapy is actually a lot of work and therapy for me to be able to say, I have failed, I have screwed up, I have done this, that, and the other, and now I'm here, and it's for you too. It's for you too, and you and you and you and everyone who's screwed up their lives. You can make a change and take a different direction. And I think it's time to shine a light on that more than ever too. Our greatness comes because of what we've been through, and it is ours to share.
Yes, and not in spite of it, like you said, because that to me, that was a shift for me personally when I decided I could love myself, not at the point when I like cut away all of these imperfect parts. Like I'm not sure what I would have been left with, a toothpick or something. I'm not sure. Right? Like we're like, I'm going to cut away these imperfect parts and then I'll be the person I want to be.
Right.
Rather, I'm going to integrate these imperfectly wonderful parts of me. And I'm going to love the wholeness of who I am. I'm going to love all of who I am. And that's not saying, because again, like immediately the mindset goes to, well, if she just accepts herself the way she is, she will not have any motivation to change and be better. Like parents do that to kids all the time.
Yeah.
It's actually quite the opposite. When we embrace fully who we are and what we've done, all our foibles, all of who we are right here, right now, that becomes the true springboard for change. That's when it opens up. Like that's when we can chase the rainbow. And it's such a different mindset. I'm going to love myself into changing versus I will love myself when I
change. Yes.
So it's so different. It's such a mindset shift. It's such a different way of being in the world. And it's so much more satisfying and it's so much more fun. I have so much more fun now that instead of just feeling ashamed because I make a mistake and I'm perfect, that I can say, oh yeah, I messed that one up and I'm going to take accountability and I'm going to do what I can to make it right. And I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to do better next time. So I have so much more fun now that I don't feel afraid of making, even the tiniest mistakes, because that's where I was, I was so afraid of that.
Yeah. Who was it that I can't remember now? Oh gosh, Marilyn Monroe or someone said, you would think a lot less of what other people thought about you if you realized how infrequently they do think about you.
Right.
It's all between our own two ears.
It does. Yeah. It can be busy up in there.
It is a very busy place.
Right. And
Uh,
that's why, like you mentioned grounding, you mentioned, like what other kinds of things. Yes, absolutely. Because we want to be in touch. We want to be in our bodies. We want to be in touch with our intuition. Sometimes I use oracle cards to help us kind of um understand what the universe and the divine is trying to tell us, just to understand that. Um, but yeah, so grounding is for me, what are we doing? Playfulness, having, I just read, and I actually have it right here, The Power of Fun by
oh,
Catherine Price. It's like, oh my gosh, if you
the
live,
power of fun.
yeah, The Power of Fun by Catherine Price. So she is kind of blowing my mind, and she talks about this idea of true fun, and it's play, connection, and flow. Those are the elements of true fun: play, connection, and flow. And so I think about how many times people don't allow themselves to have fun because like the work isn't done, or we can get stress, can make us so serious about everything that's happening,
Yes.
and I just think about having fun, being able to laugh, not at ourselves, but just at our own kind of humanness and humanity. I think is
Yeah.
so important, and just having a more playful approach to life. And for me, when I can tap into that, when I can be connected to myself and tap into my own playfulness and my own flow, then things that felt hard before feel possible.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
feels so much more possible. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Doing something with a smile in your face and joy in your heart. Great. Okay, the universe saw fit to give us a duck-billed platypus. Okay, like we're having fun here, top to bottom. Like 5-year-old paint. Universe gives us weird animals. Like this is a pretty fun place to be if we can clear
Yeah.
out some of that crap.
Right. And think about, like, what do we admire about our pets or or children? Their ability to be playful, right? In this, like, it doesn't take much. They don't need a fancy vacation. They don't need a fancy toy. They'll have fun. Dogs are naturally playful. Cats are naturally playful when they're not, ignoring us. And they're also very naturally autonomous, right? Which is also another trait to admire. But and children do the same thing. I mean, if all they have are rocks and a stick, they'll make their own fun. They don't need
Yeah.
anything fancy. And I think that's part of my brand, is this idea that you don't we want to cultivate a life that we want to live every day, not a life that is just waiting to go on vacation.
Right. Yes.
And I think in our culture, again, that can be a little bit more normalized than what I would prefer. So I always say I go on vacation to add dimension to my life, not to get away from my life.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh, yeah. I don't ever want to get away from my life, but I do want to learn more about new cultures, new people, new experiences, jump out of airplanes, go underwater, skydive, see fish, whatever, all the stuff.
Okay,
Give it
I'm
to
with
me.
you. I'm with you, except for the skydiving. Um,
Oh, come on.
well, at least, and I never say never. I'm old enough to say never. I became a runner in my 40s, and if that isn't like the definition of irony, I don't know what is. And so I like to say never, right?
I
But
love
I
that.
won't say never. I'll say not yet. I
Not yet.
parasailed for my 55th birthday. Yeah, like the heights thing is a thing. I always say I'm not afraid of being in heights. I'm afraid of falling from heights. And so like that was a thing. So I went parasailing for the first time. So if I can parasail, I can probably get like a little higher next time. I don't know. We'll
There
see.
you go. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
So we're almost out of time. I do not want to skip over this part. Tell me a little bit about, now I love that you bring in the fact that so many coaches are not therapists as well. And that is such a unique portion for you as well. Tell me about your work on the board, Oklahoma Association for Play Therapy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Love to. Okay. So, yeah. So, play therapy is a particular approach to therapy, particularly for working with children, but you can actually utilize it for all ages. And it's particularly wonderful with families because then you have, like, this intersection of children and adults, right? And so, where talk therapy fails, play therapy will succeed, and particularly with children. Play is their natural process. In play has healing properties. I mean, we've got lots of research about how imaginative play is healing for people, and that again doesn't matter the age. And so I am particularly passionate about kind of spreading the word about play therapy. In Oklahoma, it is kind of we're gaining some ground, but we want to make sure that people know that this is an option available to them, that there are people that are trained to be a play therapist and work with their child or their family in a way that is in alignment with their natural process of healing. And so because of that, so I became a registered play therapist supervisor. And I also I've served for the last few years on our local branch there. So the like kind of our parent organization is the Association for Play Therapy, and they are international. And then each state has a branch. And so right now I'm the president elect of the OKAPT. So for short. Ish.
Oklahoma Association for Play Therapists. And
yeah.
What are you guys giving therapy? Or is it a service for children needing therapy, or do you equip others who are giving this therapy?
Right, and that's what we do. So our goal is to help therapists become trained as play therapists so that they can utilize play therapy in their work with clients, and to just kind of let like the general population know that play therapy is an option when you go. So so we have resources where we can help connect them with the national directory of play therapists and in the state, like who is doing play therapy in the state of Oklahoma. And then education is a big part of that. So we do a lot of continuing education work with our, so we do an annual conference. In fact, this Friday we have a summer mini conference. So we have a speaker coming, well, she's not coming virtually, she's coming from the East Coast, and she's going to, teach us. And so we do trainings, and it's to support the professionals so the professionals then can support the clients.
Okay. So if one of our listeners is out there, has got a child or maybe even an older person in therapy that just doesn't seem to be making the breakthrough they need, this Association for Play Therapists could be a source of additional venues of therapy. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and then, yes, whether they contact our local branch, OKAPT, or the national organization, Association for Play Therapy, if they contact them, they have directories of people who have been trained and who are members. And so, that have this expertise that is really wonderful. And it's really magical to be in the playroom as someone is healing through play. It's very aligned. It's very and it almost feels magical, although it's very well researched and it's very grounded in research and tools and models.
So. I mean, like freaking wholesome, like genuine good stuff.
I always tell parents, what the good news is your kid's gonna like to come to therapy.
Exactly. I remember my boys, when I went through my divorce, my boys were like, Mom, if this lady comes and asks me how something makes me feel one more time, she can't come back. I'm sick of it. And I mean, this was an 8-year-old talking, like he was done. He was done talking. So again, had I known this existed, that would have been amazing. I'm so glad there's so much more awareness these days about these options we have and the normalization of mental health. Our brain is an organ, and I mean, it should be treated as such. And even as my background in registered nursing, I still am a registered nurse, it was still very difficult for me to wrap my mental brain around the fact that my brain is to an organ. And just like you get, an infection here, you've got to take care of here too for it all to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And just even like all the brains research that we understand now, like all of the kind of Eastern traditions of like yoga and meditation, and how the brain research just absolutely backs that up.
Yes.
And the fact that our brain isn't, like I say, fully baked, isn't like done, kind of done growing until our early 20s.
Yeah.
Used to
Yeah.
think it was, I don't know, like, I don't know. We thought it was like, a few years. Now it's a couple of decades that it takes for
Yeah.
our brain to, fully develop. It's just, yeah, that's a whole nother soapbox I could get on.
It is. I think we could have a whole other episode just based around this stuff.
We
So
could, yes,
I think we
absolutely.
should.
Yeah.
Well, Julie, tell the audience where they can find you. If you are stuck in your life and you're like, I need to do something, whether it be a job change, I need to set a boundary with my crazy family or my spouse or my kids or someone else, where can people find you to get over this hump?
Oh, yeah, that's so easy. So on my website, and that's julierising.com. And then you have to look at how my name is spelled, JulieReising, but it is pronounced rising. So julierising.com. You can email me, julie@julierising.com. You can find me on Instagram. I'm Julie Rising. And on Facebook, I'm Julie Rising.
I
So
like it. I like that
yes.
consistent branding. Good job.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So the nice thing about having a name that gets mispronounced a lot is that it's unique enough that there's not a whole bunch of other people out there with it. So
I love it.
yeah.
Well, Julie, thank you so much for your expertise, for teaching us today some steps that we can take on our own. And most of all, thank you for being a queen that leads.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. Have a great day.
You too.